Hello YouTube, my name is Nero, and today we have some Tom Clancy's The Division and this week's episode of Dear Nero, which of course is the weekly series here on my channel, where subscribers send me in fan mail and or fan questions, and I do go answer them. To cover on the gameplay today, this game has just come out, Tom Clancy's The Division. This is the game that a lot of people have been highly anticipating. I've been kind of keeping my eye on it. It wasn't like the game I was like the most excited for, but I've been keeping my eye on it, and it came out, and so I decided, hey, I'll play this. I had a game of it sent to me. I've also pre-ordered it, so I had 2 copies. I ended up giving 1 copy to my brother, and he is just at least loving the game. He's like level 15 or something like that. Like, he's definitely higher up than me. I'm only like level 4. I'm like an hour into the game or so, but I'm having a lot of fun with it so far. I think the game itself is going to really shine with the group content. What you guys are actually watching is kind of like a little group mission. It's this police precinct, and while this game, yes, does have a story, this isn't integral to the story whatsoever. It's more really of a side mission than anything, because this game has a lot of side missions and things for you to do, but there's also main story missions, which I won't want to show here on my channel because that'll just kind of like spoil things for some of you guys. So this is a completely optional like side thing, and essentially it's a police precinct, and it's got a lot of these objectives that you can go through, and you can actually change the difficulty of this instance, if you want to call it that we're going into, and you can also do it either by yourself or with random people. So what I decided to do is I decided to try to queue up and get teammates, kind of like a quick match kind of an idea, and I only got 1 teammate. You can have up to 4, I believe, in your squad at once. So it was just myself and this other guy going through this police precinct and trying to take down all the waves of enemies and trying to get to all the objectives, trying to get all the loot possible, and it was actually very fun. Especially on hard mode, there's actually a bit of a challenge to it, and it's actually pretty interesting. So I like the game so far. Again, I'm only like an hour or so into it, but my first impressions are the game itself has been pretty fun so far. But then again, I mean, every game's fun for the first hour or so, or at least generally. So I'm gonna have to continue playing to see really how good this game is. But so far, a lot of people have been saying that the Division actually is pretty good, especially once you get kind of into things, once you get into Manhattan, once you start to get to experience the story a little bit more, once you start getting more safe houses and more things unlocked, more things to do, the better the game seems to get and the more it seems to open up. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But right now, I'm only like an hour or so into it, and we've got this week's episode of Dear Nero to get through before I could go ahead and continue to play the game. The first question is actually going to be a lightning round that's coming in from Michael from Music City. So the first one is, what is your favorite chocolate? I'm not much of a chocolate guy. I don't really have any particular favorite brands. The Russell Silver stuff is pretty good. It seems passable anyway. What is your favorite breed of dog? I would say husky. I've always wanted to have a husky, but they are really high maintenance dogs with really high energy. You need to feed them certain things. You need to exercise them a lot. It seems like a lot of work, but at the same time, I can definitely appreciate the huskies are freaking gorgeous dogs. What was your favorite book? I've only read a couple of books in my entire life, and the majority of them were actually in school. Like, I'm not much of a reader outside of school, so my favorite ones that we read in school would be like Where the Red Fern Grows, Hatchet, and Brian's Winter. Those are all pretty good. What's your favorite brand of shoe? I definitely like DVS. I've been wearing DVSs since high school because they are so ridiculously comfortable, and I like the way they look. What is your favorite special ability in Black Ops 3? That would be the Scythe for Reaper. It's a freaking death machine minigun, man. It's so much fun to use. What's your favorite zombies map in Black Ops 3 so far? I would say it is Dreisendraha, because it opens up and it's actually kind of simple to understand, but at the same time, it's got an amazing theme. There's lots of stuff to do. It's a pretty fun map, all things considered. I definitely like it more than I like Shadows of Evil. What is your favorite superhero? I'm not much of a superhero guy, so I don't know. Spider-Man? Maybe? I really don't know. I've never watched a superhero movie. I've never read a superhero comic. I've never even seen a cartoon. I just don't care about superheroes whatsoever. What is your favorite city that you have been to? I'm not much of a traveler. I've spent most of my life in Pennsylvania, but I have been to Cleveland, and I like Cleveland a lot, so I'm going to say Cleveland. It's where the Browns play, and that's my favorite sports team. We'll be talking more about them later on here in the video, but yeah, Cleveland's a pretty cool city. I was happy when I was there. It was a nice little place. But aside from that, I haven't really been a lot of places. I've been to Tampa. I've been to Cleveland. Now I think about that, I haven't traveled really at all. I mean, I've stopped in places, but I don't count you going to a city because you had like a layover there while you were like on a plane. Like, you had to stop there. Like, oh, I had to stop in Atlanta on my way down to Tampa, so technically I was in Atlanta. No, I was in the Atlanta airport. I don't count that. You know, I was in the Cincinnati airport, which is ironically in Kentucky, but I don't count that me being in Cincinnati either, just because I had to stop there and change planes. Like, that's just not a thing. So I haven't actually traveled a whole lot, and nor do I really plan to. I mean, I've never really been somebody who wants to travel around the country. Like, there are things I want to see, there are places I want to go and things I want to do, but I've never traveled much, and my family's not much for taking vacations or anything like that. Like, some people go different places, or maybe they'll go to Europe or something like that, or maybe they'll go out to California, or maybe they'll go skiing or something. My family's never done anything like that, so traveling really hasn't been a big part of my life. I've never really been many places, but I have been to Cleveland, and I thought Cleveland was pretty cool. I know that probably sounds so disappointing, as some people are like, oh cool, his favorite place to go is Cleveland, which is dogged as like a terrible place to be. So I don't know. Not much of a traveler. Not much of a traveler whatsoever. The next question is going to be coming in from Cornell from Texas, who's going to write, Dear Nero, I've been watching your channel, and even though I don't play Call of Duty anymore, I still enjoy watching your content. However, on Nero's Let's Plays, I noticed a series that has been abandoned in a sense. You haven't touched Tales from the Borderlands since episode 2, and I wanted to know if you're ever going to continue. Thanks for the entertainment. Now, this is actually a very interesting topic because this is something I actually get kind of quite a bit, not just from you, Cornell, but from like a number of other people as well. I actually hear more often than you think I would hear that people like to watch my videos even though they don't play Call of Duty anymore, which is really odd to me. Like, you like to watch my videos, which are 99.9% about Call of Duty, and you don't play the game. It's always struck me as odd, but to each his own. I'm glad you find my videos entertaining. That's awesome. Over on Dear's Let's Plays, you want to know about the Tales from the Borderlands series. There's actually a number of reasons why I haven't continued that series. Number one is Telltale games typically take for freaking ever in between episodes, which is really annoying. Episode 1 comes out, it's usually 2 hours long, and it's usually great, right? And then you get to wait 3 months for episode 2 to come out. And it's not because I'm taking forever to make the video, it's because that's literally how long it takes them. Like, they put out the episode, then they wait 2 or 3 months, then they put out another episode, then they'll wait a couple months, and they put out another episode. That's their business model, right? That's how they've always done it. And it's always kind of frustrating because, like, when episode 2 comes out, they're like, okay, we're picking right up from where episode 1 left off. I hope you remember everything. It's like, well, no, it's been like 2 or 3 months. I don't remember everything. Do I have to go back and like rewatch my own video just to kind of get an idea of what's happening here in the story? Or like, this is confusing, right? And I think in total there are 5 or 6 total episodes of that game that have actually come out, and it's actually completed now. It took like over a year, but everything's completed for Tales from the Borderlands. It's like the entire story is out there, and a lot of people are saying it's like the best Telltale game to ever come out, which is awesome to me because I love the Borderlands franchise. I love the universe of everything about Borderlands. So that's definitely good news to me. I want to go back there and complete that game series, but there's also a number of road bumps in the way as well. I mean, if I look at how I post the videos in general, you have Tales from the Borderlands Episode 1. That's like the name of the actual game itself. Then you have Tales from the Borderlands Episode 2. That's the actual name of the game itself. And to make things easy for myself and the viewer, I'll typically just make a 2-hour-long video every time one of those come out and actually complete the entire episode in one sitting. Because to me, anyway, it is very convoluted to say Tales from the Borderlands Episode 1 Part 1. Tales from the Borderlands Episode 1 Part 2, and just doing it all that way, and then Tales from the Borderlands Episode 2 Part 1, and just continuing that all on. It takes so long. It's just very convoluted and very confusing, not only for myself but for the viewer. And so whenever a new episode comes out, I'll typically just do the entire episode in one sitting. So in total there would be however many episodes there are, 5 or 6 episodes in the entire series until we beat the game. I'll take the 2 hours, make a 2-hour-long video, and there we go. But 2-hour-long videos are kind of just something you have to plan to do. It's not something you can just do willy-nilly. You have to sit down, play a game for 2 hours, record for 2 hours, edit it, render it, and upload it, which takes for freaking ever. If I had to estimate the render times on that, probably 6 or 7 hours to render a 2-hour-long video. If I had to estimate the upload time, maybe on my internet speed, probably not that bad. Maybe an hour, 2 hours, something like that. And then on YouTube's end, probably another 8 or 9 hours to process it. And it's a very long thing. It's not something you can just kind of do willy-nilly. So I do plan to continue the series, just I don't really have any immediate plans to do it right away. It's one of those things where it's going to take a very long time to do those episodes. So I will do them eventually, just I don't know when. I was actually just waiting for all of them to actually come out, and they all actually have been out for a very long time now. I just haven't actually gone back and played it, which is, at the end of the day, I think is one of the problems with the model that Telltale does with their games. It's just a lot of players end up losing interest in a series because they have to wait so long in between episodes. Like Walking Dead Season 2, they were doing that game. That game was fun. I played like the first episode of that as well, and it was really fun, but it's like, okay, well now here's a 2 or 3 month gap between now and when the next episode comes out, and it's like, well, I'm about lost interest at this point then, because by the time it actually comes out, it's like, oh yeah, I'll get to that, and then I just put it off and put it off and put it off until episode 3 comes out, and it's like, okay, and then, yeah, it's a whole thing. So yeah, I do plan to continue that series, but I don't know when. It's going to happen eventually, I suppose. But thank you so much for taking interest in that series, because I haven't posted to it in almost a year now, and people are still interested in it. That's definitely pretty awesome. The next question is going to be coming in from Brady Vic on Twitter, who's going to write, Dear Nero, do you think the season pass holders for Black Ops 3 should have more access to more than just DLC maps? To me, it doesn't seem worth it. So Brady Vic, I agree and disagree with that. So number one, I feel as though the Season Pass is worth it because you're actually saving money. The Season Pass, if you guys will know, is $50 and you're getting $60 worth of content. So you're essentially saving yourself $10 because each DLC pack, which there's always going to be 4 DLC packs for Call of Duty, they all cost $15. So 15 times 4, that's $60. If you pay $50 for a Season Pass, you basically buy it all up front, but you're saving yourself $10. So it does seem worth it to me, but I do agree the Season Pass holders should get more in the sense that if a new weapon comes out, they should get access to that weapon. What company makes it so they give you a season pass where you supposedly get the DLC for the game, but then says, oh no, this particular DLC isn't covered by a season pass. This is a whole other different DLC. So I feel as though if you buy a season pass for a game, you should get all of the DLC that comes out for that game, whether it's just random weapon skins, like we just get camos. Yeah, sure, you should get those camos. That's just something you should get with your season pass. If a new weapon comes out, i.e. the stuff that we see in supply drops, that stuff should just be automatically put onto your account, and you shouldn't have to play the slot machines or buy supply drops to actually try to get these weapons. That's just something they should do to try to convince more people to buy the season pass. I think that they definitely would. I think they would see a huge number, a giant leap in the amount of people who actually purchase the season pass if they were to come out and say for the next Infinity Ward game, whatever it is, Ghost 2, Modern Warfare 4, new game, who knows what the next Infinity Ward game is going to be, right? We're going to learn about it hopefully here soon in a couple of months, but still, whenever Infinity Ward decides to let us know, we'll know. But when they make their new game, which is going to be coming out in November, it would be so cool if they were to announce, if you buy the season pass, you'll get all 4 map packs plus all the weapon camos and all of the new weapon DLC that will come out for the game. It would just automatically be put onto your account. That would be awesome. I think they should definitely do that. If they were to go down that road, I feel as though a lot more people would buy the season pass and it'd be best for them in general. And I think it'd also be better for the consumer at the end of the day, so we don't get things like supply drops making it so we have this slot machine between us and actual weapons, like actual content like that. So I think that would be worth it. But right now, I definitely think the season pass itself is worth purchasing if you're a big fan of Call of Duty. If you plan on playing all the DLC packs, I mean, why not save yourself $10? It seems to make a little bit of sense. If you can afford the $50 up front, it may be good for you. But then again, to other people, maybe putting $50 up front isn't as easy as paying $15 over the course of a couple of months. 1 month you pay $15 and a couple of months later you pay another $15, and maybe that's a little bit easier than paying $50 up front. It just depends on you and your situation. The next question is going to be coming in from Dark Falling on Twitter, who's going to write, Dear Nero, do you like the cold weather in Pennsylvania, or would you rather move to California with me? Which, is that an offer? I don't know. So I've always actually kind of liked the Pennsylvania weather. I've always liked this area. Like I talked about in the first question, I haven't traveled a lot in my life, but when I have traveled, like when I traveled down to Florida, I really didn't like it down there. It was hot, it was humid, it was Florida in the summer, guys. It was absurd. Although I have heard that Florida is amazing during like the winter months, which is why so many people go down there. But still, I've always kind of liked the Pennsylvania weather. During the winter, it's typically cold. It's winter, although this winter admittedly hasn't really been anything. During the summer, it's warm. That's how it is, right? It's cold in the winter, it's warm in the summer. Spring is amazing and fall is amazing. That's kind of how it is. But it's never really extreme. Like, you look at summers in Florida, you look at summers in California, or these are two very warm places, you're not from the U.S. They're much different than Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, in the summer, it's usually anywhere between like, I guess 60, 70, all the way up to maybe 90. Like, rarely will it go like way above 90, like way up those 90-degree days, sure, but it's never really 100. It's never anything like super high. It's usually just pretty warm. The summers here are actually pretty fantastic. You look at the winters, sure, they can get cold, but I mean, winter is never something I ever was like bothered by, because you just put on more layers and then you're good, right? You got snow tires on your vehicle, you put on a couple of layers, you're going to be fine. Especially if you let your car warm up before you go anywhere, it's typically not bad. And if you're somebody that's like lived in Pennsylvania their whole life, you can drive in the snow and it's typically not that big of a deal. The only bad side or the only downside, I suppose, is the fact that I don't have a garage. I park on the street, and so I have to like brush off my car whenever I want to do anything. So something as simple as like running down to the store, which should take like 5 minutes, is now like a 20-minute thing, so I have to brush off my car and stuff. But still, it's not that big of a deal. I've always actually kind of liked the Pennsylvania weather. I do want to go to California though, because from what I understand, California and just the entire like West Coast, like the entire western area, is kind of like Florida, right? It's kind of like the American South, except it's not humid. That sounds amazing to me, because humidity sucks. All right, that's like the worst thing about going down south. It's like, holy crap, it's so humid down here. How do you people live? It hurts to breathe out here, So I definitely want to check out California sometime. Maybe I will at one point in my life, but right now, just again, no immediate plans to do any traveling in the near future. The next question is going to be coming in from Pink Pop Tart here on YouTube, who's going to write, Dear Nero, recently you have played on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One 1, what are your thoughts on the controllers of the two systems? That's a very good question. So as you guys know, I do own both systems, and recently I went back to the PlayStation 4 to play the Awakening DLC when that first came out on the PlayStation, which I get well over a month ago. But still, I can kind of like go back and forth between the Xbox One controller and the PlayStation 4 controller, and it really isn't that much different. I actually can adjust them pretty well. Now, I may be a little bit predisposed to already kind of like the PlayStation controller because growing up, I actually played on the PlayStation 2. If you guys don't know my gaming history, essentially, I started off on a Game Boy Color, right? That was, I think the first thing I ever had, or maybe a Sega Genesis. I forget which one came first, the Sega Genesis or the Game Boy Color. Probably the Sega, now that I'm thinking about it. And then I got a PlayStation 1, a PlayStation 2. Then I made the jump to the Xbox 360. I didn't get a PlayStation 3. I got the Xbox 360. I did own a PlayStation 3 along the way, though. And then, of course, after the Xbox 360, I went to the Xbox One. Then, of course, I also bought a PS4, and I also game a lot pretty much on the PC as well. So I pretty much played on just about everything, but I did play a lot of the PlayStation back in the day, the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2. Now, I get the DualShock 4 controller is a lot different than those two systems, but still, they're kind of the same. It's kind of the same idea, essentially. The buttons are still in the same place. It's just the controller itself is shaped a little bit differently. So it didn't actually take a whole lot of getting used to. A couple of things that are different, like I'm looking at my PlayStation 4 controller right now. A couple of things that are different is the D-pad. Like if you're used to the Xbox, the D-pad is where the left stick is, and the left stick is where the D-pad is. Like they kind of swap those two around. So that's the biggest adjustment for me anyway, is not using, you basically have to move your thumb down a little bit if you're used to playing on the Xbox and you're going to the PlayStation 4. But aside from that, you get used to that in maybe like half an hour or so. Like it doesn't take very long to kind of get used to it, to the swing of things. It was a little bit odd every time I would get a kill streak to have to raise my thumb up to call it in rather than raising it down. Like there's just a little bit of muscle memory there that you kind of have to get used to. But aside from that, they're both great controllers. There's really no big differences. The systems themselves, I mean, they both work the way they're supposed to, I suppose. I don't really see too many advantages to the PlayStation 4 over the Xbox One or vice versa. I just think they're both pretty good consoles in their own right. There's really no real complaints from me, I suppose. I mean, I could complain all day about the interface of the Xbox One, but aside from, like, in terms of its actual performance, I think, both consoles are pretty good. I mean, they're pretty close. I think the PlayStation 4 actually outweighs it a little bit in terms of like how much actual power it actually has, but both systems are pretty good. I enjoy playing on both of them, and I like both the controllers, surprisingly. I did not like the PlayStation 3 controller, however. The PlayStation 3 controller was so much smaller than the PS4 controller that it was... I have big American hands. I have man hands, right? And this controller, which feels as though it was designed for a tiny Japanese girl, it's like, how do people play on this? It's so small, especially compared to the 360. It's night and day different. Whereas, while yes, the Xbox One controller is pretty big, it's still smaller than the 360 one, and the PlayStation 4 one is bigger than the PlayStation 3 one, so they kind of like met in the middle a little bit. And so going back and forth between both controllers is actually pretty simple to me. The next and final question for this week's episode of Dear Nero is going to be coming in once again from Michael from Music City, who sends in a ton of great questions every single week. Michael, if you're catching this episode, thank you so much for all the continued support of the series, because he submits questions every single week, and typically they're very good questions. He's going to write, Dear Nero, with free agency in the NFL approaching its peak, who are your hopes the Browns will pick up? Oh, Michael, I can't even begin to tell you how much of a self-hating Browns fan I've become over the years. I recently found a stat, right? I found this stat, and I found it by myself. I went back and looked at their record every single year for the past 25 years, and the Browns, fun fact, have won 3 seasons, or had 3 winning seasons, I should say, which means they had more wins than they did losses 3 times in the past 25 years. 3 winning seasons in 25 years. How horrible is that? And then just a couple of days ago, they released a statement saying, oh, we're going to be very quiet in free agency this year. We feel as though we're going to pick our players very carefully. We're going to be very methodical, is the word they were throwing around, which is just a buzzword for being boring. And they were going to not really try to land any big names this year in the NFL. I'm just sitting here like, are you kidding me? Like, we're talking about the Cleveland Browns here, the team that has had 3 winning seasons the past 25 years, is not going to try and pick up some big names. I mean, try something. Try to at least make the fans interested, because even myself, as someone who's been a Browns fan for over a decade now, I am so bored of them. They are like so consistently bad. It's like, why? I can't even begin. So far in free agency, you want to hear who they picked up? Yeah, no one. There's no one. They haven't picked up anybody. They have lost a number of great players, however. Alex Mack is gone. I believe he's on the Falcons now. Deshaun Gibson, free safety, great player, is now on the Jaguars. Travis Benjamin went to... the Chargers, right? I think he went to the Chargers. They've done nothing but just lose players. They haven't actually gotten anybody yet, and they don't plan on getting anybody. That's the thing. There's so many big name free agents in the NFL. I did like a list on Twitter earlier, like Matt Forte, Mike Wallace, Arian Foster, Tashawn Gibson. I was hoping they were going to re-sign him. You have Alex Mack. I was hoping they were going to re-sign him. Nick Fairley, Doug Martin, Holohi Nahata, and Chris Long. These are just a couple of players, just to name a few out of all the great players that are in free agency this year, and they have signed nobody. It doesn't appear as though they're even trying to make an attempt to sign anybody, and just they're digging themselves in such a hole. It's so disappointing. Like, I was hoping they would sign anybody, any big name whatsoever, especially if it's on offense. I think that would be great. Every single year the Browns do absolutely nothing. They're like, oh yes, we're Cleveland, we're above everybody else. But I think what is honestly the case is I don't think anybody wants to come to Cleveland. I think nobody wants to actually sign with the Cleveland Browns because they know they're not going to do anything. That's the very thing. They're not going to do anything. They had 3 winning seasons in the past 25 years. Like, what person in their right mind would want to come to Cleveland unless Cleveland was willing to just show them a ton of money, which they have said time and time again, they are not. They're not going to try and sign any big names because they don't want to spend a lot of money on one player in particular. They want to buy essentially just a bunch of like middle of the road players and hope their team randomly becomes good, which obviously hasn't happened in the past, I don't know, almost 30 years. And so it's horrible, man. It's horrible. I love the NFL. I love football. If you guys watch my Madden series and Nero's Let's Plays, it's like one of my favorite things in the world, right? I love the NFL. I'm almost 70 episodes into that series on that channel. You know, I love the NFL. I love Madden. I love the Cleveland Browns. But just, it's so disappointing being a Browns fan. It's getting to the point where I'm used to it. There's a reason why they call Cleveland Browns Stadium, which is now, I think it's called First Energy Stadium now. There's a reason why they call it Factory of Sadness, because it's depressing every single year. It's like playing Call of Duty and doing nothing but losing. Every single match, you just lose and lose and lose and lose. And it's gotten to the point where you don't even expect to win anymore. It's just lose and lose and lose, and your teammates are awful. You never have anybody good on your team. You may think to yourself, like, after every lobby, right? And this is a very good comparison, actually. It's like after every single match, you think to yourself, yeah, somebody good's going to be put on my team, right? This is finally what's going to happen. They're going to put some good players on my team, and we're going to have some fun. And it just never happens. All the good players get put on the other team, and they just whoop you every single game after game after game after game. And just to the point where you just never win, and you forget what it's like to even win, and you never have any good teammates, and you never do good, and you're never having fun. That's what it's like being a Browns fan in Call of Duty terms. It's pretty terrible. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys all enjoyed that little comparison, and I hope you guys all enjoyed this week's episode of Dear Nero. It was definitely a little bit shorter than usual, but we did not have a ton of questions actually submitted this week, as well as it's already kind of late, so we had to do a kind of a short little episode this week, so hopefully you guys understand that. But yeah, feel free to submit your questions for the next episode of Dear Nero if you guys would like to do so. It's very simple. All you need to do is send me a personal message here on YouTube with your question, or you can write me on Twitter at NeroTweets and use the hashtag Dear Nero. And next Wednesday, like I've done every single Wednesday for the past couple of years now, I will go through all the questions and pick the ones that I feel as though are pretty good for the show, and I will feature them and answer them here on the show, and you can possibly see your name right here on the screen and things like that. It's pretty fun. It's all good fun. We've done Dear Nero for a very long time now, and I wouldn't have it any other way because this series is certainly fun to do every single week. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Drop me a rating, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.